Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. Yes, I took a week off, but I'm back. I'm so excited. I had such an amazing week. We went on the MSC Merivilia. We went to the Bahamas, hanging out in Atlantis, swimming with the dolphins. Life is so good. And it's all because of you guys. Without you guys, without my Lord and Savior, without my bride, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. Guys, do you know that coaches need coaches? Now, I am a coach, but when I need coaching, this guy is the guy that I go to when I need coaching. He's truly amazing. He's probably one of the best mindset and belief coaches I've ever met. And I've met a lot of them. I've met Tony. I've met Ed. I've met a lot of these gentlemen. And this gentleman below is one of the best that I know. So we're going to be talking about NLP, mindset, changing your BS, not your bullshit, but your belief systems. This is going to be awesome. Michael, brother, welcome to the show. I'm so grateful that we finally got a chance to get together.
Well, thank you, Richard. That was quite the introduction. Thank you. I'm blushing a bit.
Bro, you are so awesome. And I just want to say, I just found out that me and you have almost the same amount of sober time, going almost 36 years now. So I just want to say congratulations. And I thought I was an OG. You're an OG.
Yeah, I've got a little bit over 36, and you're just coming up on 36, so about the same amount of time.
But and before we even get into anything else, if we didn't do it 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time, we wouldn't have what we have now. We wouldn't be able to do what we do. And for me, if I don't put my sobriety first, I lose everything.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. And it's when you're in recovery, it's one of those things that you absolutely have to renew every single day. When you wake up in the morning, you have to make that promise to yourself and to your loved ones that today is going to be a sober day. Because if you don't, the disease is going to get you, and then it won't be a sober day.
And I love it. But don't you think, like we're starting at the end, but it's okay. You know, like I said, I just got back from a cruise, and every night I ate the filet mignon. I ate the lobster tail every night, drinking virgin pina coladas. And even when I go out to dinner nowadays, if I go out to dinner, I'm ordering the surf and turf because it reminds me 35 years ago, 3 miles from where I'm at right now, I was eating dog food, eating out of a garbage can, and living in a crack house. So for me, I keep the memories fresh. I don't live there anymore, but I remember it, so I don't go back to living there anymore.
Yeah.
So before we even get started, because I do have a traumatic brain injury, if I don't ask the question, I'll always forget it. Michael, What is your definition of resiliency?
Resilience to me is the ability to stay safe. So to me, it's the belief that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. So no matter what I have to face, no matter what goes on in my life, I'm going to be okay. That's my resiliency. It doesn't mean that I don't. Yep, go ahead.
No, I was saying, I'm just thinking because since I knew we were going to get together and I've been following you, I love everything you're doing. But if people would see me and you today, they wouldn't think that our whole life was unicorns, rainbows, Skittles. You know, it's not always been this way. And we've gone through a lot of struggles. And I know you've gone through a lot of struggles, not only as a teenager and an adolescent, but also as an adult male.
Yeah. And I still go through struggles. Like some days, like there are days where it's really hard just existing. But whenever it starts to get hard, one of the things that I try to think of is that I have survived 100% of my worst days. And that's a pretty damn good track record. And I'm going to survive this too. So,
but when people see us,
yeah,
they see the success, they see the families, the vacations, the stuff. They don't realize that some days, at least in my case, I still struggle. There's some days where I don't want to get out of bed. There's some days. So no matter how successful you are, we still have those days, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are days where I don't want to get out of bed. And, I have been able to kind of build a life for myself where, if I have a day where I'm in a really bad place and there are I just can't cope with like the work stress and owning your own business, which is a tough thing to do. I can take a day off because I've built my life that way. And not everybody has that kind of luxury or that kind of freedom. So the people that I deal with are the ones that don't have that luxury, but they also don't have the coping mechanisms that they need to get through the bad times when they come. So part of my practice is helping people build resiliency, helping people to build confidence, helping people to build self-esteem, so that when things get rough, that they too can say, look, I know things are rough now, but it's not going to last, and I will get through it.
And one thing that I love how open and honest you are. You're like me. We're transparent. There's no BS. Mm-hmm. There's no fluff. If I've stood on many stages with many of the biggest speakers in the world, and if you ever go backstage in the green room, it's a shit show back there, because a lot of the people you think have it together, they don't have it together. So at least for us, we're like, okay, yeah, I'm living good here today, but I still struggle, especially with my mental health. Like I talked about this last week. I attempted suicide once 12 years ago, and I almost did it again about 8 weeks ago after a friend took his own life. And the only thing that saved my life is I wrote my own obituary, and I keep it in my wallet. And that was that one piece of paper is what saved my life that day. So guys, if you see people that look like they have it all together, most of the times they don't have it all together. Right?
No.
All right. So, let's hop in the Wayback Machine. Let's hop in the DeLorean. Where'd you come from? Where did you grow up? And how did you get into this crazy world of coaching and helping other people and changing lives one person at a time?
It's a long story. But I grew up in southeastern Pennsylvania in a little town. If you know anything about Pennsylvania, there's the big city of Philadelphia, and then there's a small city of Reading that's northwest of Philadelphia. Yep. The town I grew up in is equidistant between the two.
What town?
So it's Pottstown.
Know it very well. Yes, I do. Yep.
Why?
Well, I'm right outside of Jersey, so we used to take road trips up the PA Turnpike and just drive around Pennsylvania. So, and a lot of good shopping. I did a lot of good shopping in Reading. So,
Pottstown is one of those places that people know because they pass the exit on the highway. That's really all it is. It's an exit off the highway. There's not a whole lot there. It's not a huge place. In fact, when I was in high school, we had T-shirts that said, Pottstown isn't the end of the world, but you can see it from there.
But now also that part of the country, they're hardworking, down to earth kind of people, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I grew up in what looked like a fairly typical family. I'm one of 6 kids. And so there were 3 boys and 3 girls. Sorry, I have allergies. Um, but in that time and in that space, there wasn't a whole lot of people that talked about feelings. They didn't talk about um, how to deal with what you were going through. So I grew up kind of blank in that respect, and I was a bit of I won't say a black sheep, but I was more like a gray sheep in the family. Um, I caused minor trouble, so um, it was your typical kind of not exactly rural or small town because it's a town of like 40,000 people, but it was a typical like American upbringing. So after that, got a couple of jobs, worked for an insurance company for a long time, worked my way up in the company and became a computer programmer, which is at the time was a pretty well respected job. And all of that time, I was basically drinking myself to sleep every night. So on the outside, I looked good. On the inside, I was dead. And it was during that time that I got into recovery. I was in my late 20s when I got into recovery and put the booze down for good. I was one of the lucky ones where once I'd made the decision that I was going to give it up, I gave it up. And that was my first kind of foray into the mental health sort of spectrum. And it's funny, I was right before we got on, I was talking with a friend of mine who is another coach who is also in recovery. And he was like, well, like our coaching programs is pretty much teaching the rest of the world the 12 steps. It's like, yeah, that's pretty true. Because the 12 steps.
Wait, I want to go back because,
Yeah.
I quit at the age of 20
Yeah.
and I started at 11. So I did 9 I had 9 years in before most people even started drinking. But when I
Yeah.
quit, because I was looking at 5 years for grand larceny and I was going to do the whole 5 years until the guy that I robbed, which is a police officer, gave me a break. And he said I can either give him his money back in 24 hours, and I had to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And I got his money back. I begged, I borrowed, I didn't steal. I paid it all back. But instead of hitting 90 days, I hit 300 meetings in a row. And I can remember, and I could still smell the stale coffee. I can still remember the nasty cookies. But I can also remember me thinking, I got to get away from my people, places, and things. And I'm 20 years old, so that was really hard. But then I realized once I heard somebody tell their story, they were telling my story.
Yeah.
So talk to us about, because this is a weird question. I don't think not a lot of people ask it, but what was the day before your come to Jesus moment like? What was the day of your come to Jesus moment like? And what was the day after your come to Jesus moment like? Because they're 3 different days. They're 3 different parts of your life, you know?
They are. And my days were not close together. So about 9 months before I actually put the bottle down and decided that enough was enough, about 9 months before that, I was coming home from work. I got into my apartment. There was no booze in the apartment. And the first thought in my head was, thank God I don't have to drink tonight. That was the first thought in my head. So I get home from work, I get changed out of my clothes, I make dinner, I go about, the stuff that you do when after you get home from work. And I kept repeating over and over and over in my head, thank God I don't have to drink tonight. And I said that to myself until the girl at the liquor store put the change in my hand. And then I went out in my car and cried. That was my kind of wake up moment, because I was no longer in control. It was the booze that was running my life, not me. And even after that, it still took me like 9-10 months to actually reach out and get the help that I needed. And
so
those were
was there trauma leading up to this that caused you to drink, or is it you just like the taste of it?
It was there was trauma, but it wasn't like any great big event. It was well, there's a couple of things. Number one, I talked about the way that we were raised. There was no talk of emotions. There weren't ways to handle what you were going through. And my life pretty much ran on fear. So I didn't know how to deal with the fear. I had no confidence. I had no faith in myself. I didn't have any of that because I wasn't given that. I wasn't taught that. And also, I came from a family of 6. When I was 18 months old, my parents had twins, which means that I was, for all intents and purposes, kind of set aside so that they could take care of the twins. And when you're 18 months old, you don't think, oh, my parents are overwhelmed, that's why they're doing this to me. When you're 18 months old, you think of what's wrong with me? Like, why aren't they taking care of me? So there was all that going into the type of person that I had become as an adult, which was covering up an intense fear of just life and a struggle to relate to people, because I always felt abandoned. I never felt part of. Like going back to that early childhood stuff. And that was just the way that I reacted to everything. So when I drank, I got confidence. When I drank, that fear went away. When I drank, I was able to do things, because like I would be afraid of even like taking the garbage from my apartment out to the back lot where the big dumpsters were, because I didn't want to run into anybody. So, it was that kind of like almost disabling fear that I used alcohol as a tool to get over. But when you're using something external instead of fixing yourself, the tool becomes something insidious and becomes something really bad, which is what happened to me. I became addicted to the alcohol. I couldn't function without it.
All right. Well, I want to give a big shout out to Patriots Inside the Wire. Her name is Tracy. She lost her son. She's a Gold Star mom, and she also has dealt with a lot of addictions, and she's changing the face of recovery. So I just want to give a big shout out, Tracy. I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for the comments. But now let's talk about that, because somebody once asked me, because like this year I'm going to record over 300 episodes, and I'm going to be on over 300 podcasts this year. And one of the questions I get asked all the time is, did you like the taste of alcohol? And I said, no. But once I had the first taste, I went from being Richard to being Rick. I can go out. I can talk to anybody. I can be gregarious. I can, if I was Richard, I'm home. I'm watching TV. I'm under the covers, and I'm not talking to anybody. But give me a drink. I'm on the tables with chandeliers. But once I was no longer able to drink, I didn't know who Richard was again. So talk about a little bit about that, how to go from, once you're having a coping mechanism to having to, like they say in the programs, having to live life on life's terms. So what was that like?
It was tough. It was very tough. And again, because I didn't have any of the sort of emotional background on what to do, I had a long period where I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't growing either. So that went on for a couple of years. And like once you, that's it, like you put it really well, where like when you put down the drink, you have to come back to who Richard is, and I had to come back to who Michael is. And Michael was still that scared little boy who, was afraid to take the trash out because he might run into somebody. So I had to learn a whole new set of coping mechanisms. And to be quite frank, I didn't do it very well. I learned how to cope. I struggled through a lot. And I basically just lived day by day and struggled through what I had to struggle through, and didn't grow a whole lot during a big period of time.
All right, so I got a question. Somebody texted me a question. Yep. I always have people come in, sometimes text me if they can't do it on a computer. And this is Frank. Frank asked me, he says, and I'll give my opinion and then you give yours. He says, Rich and Michael, what is your definition of being dry and being sober? And my definition is somebody that is dry is just an asshole that doesn't drink. Somebody that's sober is somebody that tries not to be an asshole and doesn't drink. So what is your definition of being dry and being sober?
Pretty much the same as you. If you just put down the drink and you don't deal with what the issues were that made you pick up the drink in the first place, then that's to me, that's you're a dry drunk.
I love it.
Because you still are that, afraid little boy. You still are that asshole. You still are the person that you were trying to cope with, that the drink helped you cope with. If you try and change, if you try and grow, then to me, you're being sober. It doesn't matter if you grow a lot. It doesn't matter, you could still be an asshole. If that's your personality and you're going to be an asshole, whether you're drinking or not, that's not going to change. But, if you are trying to kind of fix that, whether you are only an asshole sometimes or whatever, then that's still being sober.
Okay. So, as you see, I'm writing stuff down because I don't want to miss anything. And you've mentioned it a couple of times. You've mentioned the going from being a boy to being a man, and I talk about this all the time. The man up mentality is killing men every single day, where somebody's just saying, hey, bro, just man up. Don't deal with your feelings. Deal with them later. And then if you're a veteran or a first responder, and if all you have is your feelings and your memories when you're no longer that thing, it usually end up looking at the bottom of a bottle or the end of a barrel. So talk about how the man up mentality is killing men every day in the United States or worldwide.
Oh, it is pretty much worldwide now. And for better or worse, it's the way that we were raised. Like, my father never talked about how he felt. He never talked about, like, how do you get through being angry? And when I first started into kind of self-development, it took me a while to have a little bit of therapy, which helped some, but not a lot. And then, like, after I had been sober probably like 10 or 12 years, I started getting into a little bit of self-development work and like really trying to grow through what I had been through instead of just suffering through my life. And when I started doing that, I was going through some studies with a minister. We were doing some private counseling. And he asked me how I felt because I was going through some really, really hard times. There was a time, it's funny when you are going through stuff like this and you are kind of like up against a block and you don't want to move forward. Sometimes the universe says, you know what, you're going to move forward. And if I have to kick you in the head to make you do it, I'm going to do that. Well, I got kicked in the head by the universe. We had a year 15, 16, 18 years ago now, where we had 15 people die, close friends and relatives, within a year. 15 people. It was like every 3 weeks, like clockwork. I would walk into the office and the people would go, oh, who now? It was that bad, because they could just tell by the look on my face. So in order to cope with that, because I had no coping mechanisms, I started seeing our minister and going through some counseling. And he would ask me how I was feeling, and I wouldn't be able to tell him because I had no emotional vocabulary. I didn't know I didn't know how to describe what I was feeling. I didn't know how to deal with what I was going through. I didn't even have words to tell him about how I was feeling. And I think that is like a huge disservice that we are giving men and boys at this point. Because if you don't know how to deal with the emotions that you are presented with as a human being, and it has nothing to do with like, oh, like be masculine or, oh, that's a feminine thing. It has nothing to do with that. We are human beings. We are emotional creatures. So if you have no clue how to deal with that side of your life, of yourself, then you're going to break. It's that simple. So
yeah, and I agree.
So,
and like something happened to me yesterday. I'm not going to go into it, but and I was feeling. Usually in recovery, they say you're heading for a relapse if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And I was feeling that way yesterday, and then I started thinking, what are my triggers? And I think once you get to learn what your triggers are, then you can learn how to not go off because you already know what your triggers are, and you can start identifying, well, I'm feeling this way because of. So talk about how we need to learn what our actual triggers are that actually set us off to go into doing the next stupid thing.
Yeah. Well, first off, when I think about triggers, to me, a trigger is something that I need to look at. So if you do something that causes a reaction in me, I have to look at that reaction. It's not what you did, it's my reaction. So in order to sort of fix that trigger, I have to find out why I'm reacting to what you did. And sometimes to fix it, I can ask you not to do that again.
Yeah.
But sometimes in order to fix that, I have to figure out like where that trigger is coming from and what I can do to not react that way again. Because I don't have control over you. I can ask you not to do it again, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to. So I can only control what I do myself.
And I think that's the one blessing for having this show. I mean, I'm up to, I think, almost 1,300 episodes with amazing guests like you. And sometimes I won't even think about a guest for maybe 6 months to a year. And then it pops in my head. And I had a gentleman on, his name is Rich Deviney, United States Navy SEAL, the commander. And he wrote a book called The Attributes. And he lives by something called the 3-minute rule. If something shitty happens to you, you can stay down for 3 minutes. Then it's time to get the fuck back up. Or if you win, you can celebrate for 3 minutes. Then it's time to move the fuck on. So I got aggravated, whatever it was. And I'm like, you know what? Is it going to matter to me in 5 years? Is it going to matter to me in 5 weeks or 5 months? No, then I'm not going to give it 5 minutes of my time now. So talk about how important that is to, to acknowledge it, but don't live in it.
Right. Well, this actually kind of ties into what we were talking about with men and not being able to deal with their emotional side as well, because we are emotional creatures. We act through our emotions. Things cause emotions in us, but our emotions are incredibly temporary. Like they've done studies on this where, like, if you're angry and you just let yourself be angry, it lasts for about a minute and a half. That's it. But if you continually think about it and rehash it and bring it back up in your head and keep doing that to yourself time after time after time, you can stay angry for days. But the anger itself, if you just let it be, will last a minute and a half. So our emotions are incredibly temporary. And we have to learn to treat them that way.
And and I think, and I wanted to bring this up. This happened on cruise. I'm a lifelong learner, like we talked about earlier. I'm only a ninth grade dropout, but I've read over 6,000 books, have over 15, almost 1,300 interviews, 3-time top selling author. But so I try to learn from everybody. I don't care who it is. If it's the CEO, if it's the janitor, I want to learn from something. And my 19-year-old boy said to me, "You're an asshole." And I'm like, "Where'd that come from?" And then we sat down and we were talking. I was like, "You're right. That I need to get better at that." So I can have either had an attitude, or I could have did what I did. I put my arm around my son. I said, "Thank you. I needed that. I'm trying to get better every day." And if we only have yes people around us, we're not going to be able to get better every day. So talk about how important active listening is to the people around you.
Oh, it's a skill that I wish everybody had. And unfortunately, not a lot of people do. Because most of the time we listen to respond. We don't listen to inform. When you're having a conversation with someone, you're thinking about the next thing that you're going to say, not really listening to what they're saying to you. So active listening, being present with that person, being able to understand what they're saying and not have your mind go off onto like whatever you need to say next. Because, if someone is talking to you, they may, I have a lot of friends that are circular thinkers. They start talking and they go to a point and then they keep talking and talking and talking, and then they come around to the solution. So whatever I thought that I was going to say while they're going around that circle doesn't matter, because they have talked themselves to the solution. So I don't have to say anything. So if I just participate in what they are saying and listen, it's a lot easier on me.
And a lot of times, especially in sales, the customer will tell you what they want. Yeah. All you got to do is shut up and listen. And I think even in my niche, podcasting, the greatest compliment, well, I thought it wasn't a compliment. I thought I was being smacked down by Mr. David Meltzer. He left a comment and he said, Rich is more interested than interesting. And I was pissed off at him, and I wrote back at him like, the hell is that supposed to mean? I'm not interesting? He's like, I want you to Google that quote. And I think it went back to like Walter Cronkite or something like that, where they were saying, or Dan Rather saying that they were more interested in what the person was saying than interested in what they're saying. So I think that, a lot of people say, oh, Rich, I had great conversation. I'm like, I didn't say nothing. I just sat there and listened to you. So talk about how
Yeah,
important it is, especially in coaching, how important it is to actually listen to your client and not just trying to teach them, but you have to listen for the problem so they can actually help get their own solutions out. It's like being a psychologist sometimes, being a coach.
it is. It is sometimes, but being an active listener, being an intelligent listener is probably the best skill that a coach can have. Because if you think about the way that coaching works, is if I'm talking with you and you're going through an issue, it might not be something I've ever done. So I'm not the expert. You are. So if we want to find a solution, it's not going to come from me. I have to listen to what you are saying and have you think about what it is you're saying and kind of twist it a little bit so you think differently about what you're saying so that then you come up with your own solution because I'm not the expert, you are. That's the way coaching works. So
I'm a
being
big sports guy, and I realize that
yeah,
all the great coaches need coaches. Even the greatest sports
absolutely.
athletes, Tom Brady loved to be coached up. Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, they all love to be coached up. And if you looked at Phil Jackson, this is what he looked like on the sideline. He never said a word. He just sat, crossed his legs, and he knew that when Michael Jordan and Pippen and Rodman came back, he was going to give them that look and that small couple words, and they knew exactly what he meant. He didn't have to go off and act stupid. And they think,
Mm-hmm.
and for me, that's the coaching that I like. I'm not that big screaming kind of guy. I tune you out. I'm like, what? You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Oh, me too.
So,
Me too.
so okay, let's talk about it because all right, you get sober, and a lot of the slogans that we learned in AA are really, you know, personal development coaches. They're personal development slogans. Think, think,
Mm-hmm.
think. A lot of them are personal development slogans that if we just use them in our regular life, we would get so much further. But now I wrote this down because it was really important to me. You lost your job after
I did.
26 years
Yeah.
and you're sober at the same time. But like if me and you have a downfall, if we have something go wrong, like my wife, if she has something go wrong, she can come downstairs, grab a hard iced tea or grab a bottle of wine. But Michael had after losing his job at 26 years, being sober, he can't just go down and pop a few back. He has to deal with life on
Mm-mm.
life's terms. So talk about
Yeah.
that.
Um, well, I lost my job. I was with the company I was with for over 26 years and in the middle of the pandemic. It was January of 2021 where they reorganized and decided that they were getting rid of everybody that was long term. So on the same day that I got let go, I know of 13 other people that got let go in my division. So, and it was a large company. So, this is actually how I got into coaching because it had been in the back of my mind for a while, and I wasn't really happy at the position I was in. Um, I knew I wanted to do something where I was going to be able to help people, and I knew I wanted to do something that was going to um, challenge me as a person while I was helping people. So I had often thought of, like maybe quitting my job and going into healthcare or something like that. I just never had, first of all, the gumption, because in a lot of ways I still am that scared little boy that, got sober in his 20s. A lot of that stuff is still around and still affects me to this day. I'm working on it, but it still is there. So all of a sudden I had, because they packaged us all out. So I had time, I had some money, and I had sort of the ability. Now, it took a while because when I lost my job, I got really depressed. I was down in the dumps for a long time. Uh, I spent like 6 weeks probably on the couch, where sometimes the biggest achievement I had for the day was that I got a shower, and or I fed myself. Some days were like that. We talked before about the people that are sober still have struggles. That was a huge one for me. And once I decided that I was going to give coaching a try, I called a couple of friends that we have that are coaches, and I asked them about the processes. I asked them about schools. I asked them about a couple of things. And everything that they said felt right to me. It felt like I was coming home. And as soon as I made the decision that that's what I wanted to do, everything fell into place. I found a school within days that I could attend. They had the types of classes that I wanted to go to. I liked their vision statement. I liked the way they taught. Their classes were an express sort of format, so I wasn't spending months in a classroom. And it was just like boom, 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 boom. I like lost my job in January. In March, everything was set up. I was starting school. So,
Right.
By June, I was, for all intents and purposes, a coach.
All right, so let's talk about imposter syndrome for a minute,
Yep.
because it can go both ways. One can, like I meet, or not I meet, but I've seen a lot of life coaches.
Mm-hmm.
They're 19 years old and they're a life coach, and they
Yeah.
haven't lived any life. Or if you're 18 years old and you have abs, congratulations, but you're not exactly a life coach or a health and fitness coach at 18 years old. But then also on the flip side, like I didn't start monetizing my podcast and just till last year, because I wanted to make sure that I had millions of downloads. I wanted to make sure that I had people like John Lee Dumas, David Meltzer, Gary Vaynerchuk. I wanted to make sure that I had social proof before I started.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people, they never start. They're just either one day, or they're worried about what are my friends are going to think, or what is my cousin from down the street going to think that I'm a coach now, and then they never do nothing. So talk about that.
Yeah. Well, one of the statistics that they gave us when I was in school is that 80% of the people who study to be a coach never become a coach. 80%. So I had decided from day one that I was not going to be part of that 80%. And it was tough. And, there are still days where I go through, is this really what I want to do? The answer always comes back yes. And that's the difference. It's like, even if I don't know what I'm doing in the moment, I can get myself through it. And this has to do with mindset. And, a lot of people, when you say imposter syndrome, it's my belief that imposter syndrome is just inexperience. So if you feel like you aren't capable of doing something, like especially like you hear about this in the corporate world where I come from, of, people get promoted and then they get all messed up because they don't feel like they can live up to the expectations of being promoted. Well, it's a brand new job. There's a learning curve. You're not going to be a perfect manager the day that you get the job. It's going to take time for you to learn how to be a manager, how to be a leader, how to develop people that are underneath you. It's experience. So yeah, you're going to feel like an imposter at the beginning, but the more experience you get, the more you're able to learn, the less you're going to feel like an imposter. So when I became a coach, yeah, I was filled with like all kinds of doubt and all kinds of, what am I trying to do here? Who's going to listen to me? Who's going to want me to help them with their issues? All that kind of stuff. And it was just one step at a time of like, okay, I had a session with this person. It didn't go well. What can I do next time to make it better? I learned. And that got rid of a lot of the imposter syndrome. But it's experience. It's with the same thing about like when you are doing the confidence building and when you're doing the resilience stuff. Again, it's like a perfect example. I have a client who is exceptionally good at sales. That's what her background is. She now runs her own company, and they're coming out with a couple of new products. And she was all upset because she was going to have to do all these sales recordings and learn all these new things. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Sales. It's like the only thing you have to learn is talking in front of a camera instead of to your sales group. And she's like, well, yeah, but I've never done that. I said, yeah, but the sales, what you're going to say. And she's like, well, yeah. I said, so how does that take care of the kind of stress that you're feeling right now? And she's like, well, that gets rid of it all because I know what I'm talking about. Like, yeah. So her imposter syndrome was all about something that she didn't even have to worry about because she knew what she was doing. She just couldn't see it for herself.
And like in
So,
recovery, we're taught that time takes time.
Yes.
That's something that, and if we put that in the business world, or even like in my niche, the average podcast lasts 13 episodes. So if you hit episode 14, you're in the top 10%. And now you just got to put the reps in. Like Ed Milet's book was just do just one more.
Yeah.
And I think that, like now my big flex is if somebody asks me, well, why should I hire you as a coach or to be a podcast coach? And I could show my #1 bestseller book and say, well, I literally wrote the book on it. Or I could just say, Google me. Google the Vertical Momentum Podcast. We're on the first 8 pages of Google. But I couldn't do that on day one. I had no listeners. I had no shows. So you're right. You have to put in the time and you have to put in the extra. You got to put in that little extra work. And I think that now I think it's easier to be successful today than it was when we were coming up. Because I think it was, what was the book? It was by a guy named A.L. Williams. If anybody remember A.L. Williams from back in the day, he talked about enough is, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. And if you can put in a hard day's work and being honest and just work an extra hour a day, you're going to beat 95% of the people. And then the other 5% is just a dogfight. So talk about that is, I think it was Zig Ziglar's. I'm a big Zig Ziglar guy. And I think he said that, there's never a traffic jam on the extra mile. And I think sometimes if you want to get ahead nowadays, it's easier because all you got to do is put a little bit more effort in than everybody else. Yeah.
And that's really what it is. It's like you have to, and it's funny. I don't even think that you need to be like put in more effort than everybody else. You need to put in more effort than you would have yesterday. If you keep trying to improve day by day, the success will come. I truly believe that if you just improve what you are doing a little bit every single day, the success will come.
Okay, I got another question by a guy named Tony. Tony says,
Yep.
Michael. He says, Michael, I've been a fan of people like Tony Robbins, Ed Milet. They've been in the game a long time, and then there's a lot of coaches that have come and gone. What is the
Yep.
difference between a coach and a good coach?
That's a little hard to define because um, a person who's going to be a good coach for you is not going to be a good coach for someone else, because the one thing that you want from a coach is results. Now, when you are comparing like a Tony Robbins with someone else, Tony Robbins will give you results, but the way that he does that is wrapped in like a huge marketing machine, which is why people pay him like $10,000 for 15 minutes of his time, because he's been able to create that kind of mystique around him. But what he does is absolutely no different from what you and I do. It's just, if you are a person who has an issue, you are looking for results. And if you come to me, I might be able to get you results, but I might not. It depends on the issue, and it depends on the person and whether we jive or not. And you might be one of those people that don't jive with Tony Robbins, so you're not going to get results from him. So, everybody would say that Tony Robbins is a great coach, and he is. Personally, I don't really jive with 100% of what he says. So I don't think I will ever see myself in a Tony Robbins seminar.
Okay. But now for me, like when I have my own private clients that I coach, and if somebody wants me to coach them, I'm going to be like, first of all, I'm not the cheapest.
Yeah.
That's just a fact. You pay for what you get. Second of all, being 23 years in the military, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm going to call you out on it. So if you're a snowflake, I'm not the guy for you. There may be somebody else for you. And I also tell them, if I'm more interested in your success than you are, then this is not going to work. Because, I'm the one that's be like, I got two people that their podcast are dropping this week. And I'm constantly texting them, are you ready? You ready to rock? You ready to roll? So I think for me, the difference between a good coach and a regular coach is, and I think Gary Vaynerchuk said, he said, the best business strategy ever is care. Like my clients, absolutely. I tell them, even after you hire me, we're still going to be friends. My phone is still going to be available if you have any questions or anything. I'm building generational relationship. I'm playing the long game in coaching. And I think even a lot of people, they shit on people like Tony. Tony's been at this for almost 30 years. I remember as a kid watching those tapes of him 3:00 in the morning, walking on coals. Mm-hmm. So he's been but he's consistent, and he's in the
Absolutely.
game. He's giving results. And I think, like I said, there's been a lot of great NFL coaches, but there's only certain few that have 250, 300 wins. They had to be consistent for a reason. And a lot of them, they say because their players knew that they cared about them. Like I'm a Dolphins fan. That's my team. I'm a Miami fan. And they said if Coach Shula gave you that look, or the coach for the Cowboys, I don't remember his name, but they said if he gave you that look, you did something wrong. You just come back to because he cared about you. So talk about how important caring about your clients are.
Oh, it's right up there. I mean, if we didn't care, we wouldn't be coaches. I mean, it's really that simple, or we wouldn't last as coaches. When I first got into this, like I said, I got into this industry to help people, and that's what, it's always going to be my why of why I'm doing what I do, is because I want to help people. There are coaches out there, like in any industry, you always have the black sheep. You always have the people that are in it for the wrong reasons. They see Tony Robbins and they think that they can make a lot of money, so they're in it for the money. They're not in it to really help people. They're not in it because they care. And even Tony Robbins, with all of his success and all of the like marketing and everything that he does, I believe in his heart he is still in it to help people, and that he cares. And
Okay, so
I think, yeah.
one thing I love about you, and you talk about it a lot, and I wrote it down and I actually circled it 9 times. It's the word intention, because somebody challenged me about, now it's 18 months ago, to write 2 words for the year. And it was a New Year's Eve. And my words for for the 2023 were intention and attention. And if you're in my business, you need the attention, but you need to be intentional. And this year, my words are intention, attention, and retention. Because if you have a bucket, but the top is just as big as the bottom, nobody's staying in your bucket. So if you don't worry about retention, you're not going to have the attention or the intention. So let's start off with your word intention, and why is that so important to you?
Because we are driven by what our intention is. If you want to accomplish anything, you need to know your why. You need to know your intention for doing it. Because if you don't have that sort of internal guidepost, that reason for you to actually put in the work to get something done, it's not going to happen. So that is why intention is so important to me. And also, if we spoke a little bit before the broadcast about manifestation. Intention is a huge part of manifestation, of when you send your intention out to the powers that be, they're not going to bring it back to you unless you actually know what it is. So you have to have the intention before you can act, before you can become, before you can receive.
I totally agree 100%, Mike. But something that, my dad passed away 3 years ago, Valentine's Day. And when I went down to his funeral to help mom out, I brought a book by Dean Graziosi. And something that I don't remember anything but the book, except he talked about something. It's called the 7 Whys. And once you break down the 7 whys of what you're doing, you can't help but succeed. But I think sometimes, like my first podcast that I talk about my book was called Success Your Why Powers Your How. And a lot of people, they don't have a powerful enough why. And that's why they quit. So I think if we can do, like, even, Dean Graziosi even says, if you can just write your 7 whys and go deep into your whys, then when the time gets tough, when you want to quit, your whys are going to be more powerful than your quitting, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And my intention of wanting to help people has carried me through a lot of the dark days of becoming a coach. Because, like, that it's not an easy industry to get into. for a lot of reasons. But like one of the biggest ones is that you're not only becoming a coach, you're becoming an entrepreneur, you're becoming a business owner. So there's all of these side things that you have to learn in addition to being a coach. And that actually has been the toughest part of my journey as a coach, of learning all of that stuff.
And I think coaching, for me, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people with the show and speaking and all that good stuff. But it's the 3 people that I couldn't help, the 3 people that I lost to suicide, that haunt me. I don't ever think, like, even I think it's kind of like the Michael Jordan, where he's like, I got 6 championships, whatever, but I still missed 9,000 shots.
Yep.
So I think that, for coaches, like, I'm sure that when the coach of the Patriots sits back and thinks of all the successes, I'm sure sometimes he might think about, what did I miss with Aaron Hernandez? What did I miss with Junior Seau? I had all the great, all these great accolades, but maybe those were the 2 that I couldn't help. So have you ever had somebody that you coached and it went sideways or didn't work out the way you think it was going to work out?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There was a woman that I was helping to get through some childhood stuff that she was going through. And through all that, like, she was able to get past some of it, but not all of it. And it got to a point where she didn't want to work on it anymore. I was having trouble trying to help her, so we just kind of ended our relationship. But that's probably going to stay with me for a very long time, of like, what else could I have done? How else could I have helped her?
All right.
And
yeah, I get it.
yeah,
I totally
and
get it.
What? Yeah, and you know what? As human beings, we have this thing called negative bias, where we tend to concentrate on the negative. And this goes way, way back to like when we were living in caves and all that kind of stuff. Because if you had to, in the middle of the night, go outside and find a bush, there's a good chance that there's an animal out there waiting to kill you. So you had to be really careful. You had to think about what could go wrong. We still have that programmed in us. We're kind of hardwired for it. So it's something that we really have to fight against once we start looking at how to improve our life. And again, all of this goes right back into what we were talking about before: resiliency and building confidence and building courage. So once you can sort of quiet down that negative bias, and because like I said, we're hardwired for it, it's never going to fully go away. But if you can sort of quiet it down a little bit, you get so much more benefit out of looking at the positive than you do concentrating on the negative.
All right. So, I want to talk a little bit about NLP. I love NLP. A little bit about manifestation, because, when I started to get back into the rabbit hole, I downloaded Audible about 2 years ago. And the first book I downloaded was Awaken the Giant Within. And it was because I had the tape from like 30 years ago or 20 years ago. And then I started listening to Tony, Ed Milet, Tim Ferriss, Russell Brunson, and they all started talking about Dale Carnegie. They started talking about Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, and it's all has to do in the mind. And I think, I think it was Dale Carnegie. I think it's one of the brothers said it, that your obsessions become your possessions. And for me, I called bullshit on all of this. I said it's all bullshit. It does work. until I started putting it into practice. And when I went on this cruise, I literally got treated like a king compared to everybody else that was around me. And I wasn't doing anything different. It was just the way I walked, the way I talked to people. And when I left, the wait staff was calling me Sir Richard. And I'm like, what? I'm a ninth grade dropout. You do not realize this? But I went to the slot machines, crushed it on the slot machines. I went to the poker table, crushed it on the poker table. And it was just thinking, I'm a child of God. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm blessed in whatever I do. So for me, it was having that mindset of I'm starting to manifest success. And the reason why I bring the manifestation up is we just came back from a cruise. Now, my wife is deathly afraid of water. But on my phone, I had a picture of Atlantis. And I have a vision board at home, and it's been on my vision board for 10 years. One day she came up to me and says, Rich, guess where we're going? I'm like, I don't know. The shore? I don't know. She's like, no, we're going to go to the Bahamas on a cruise ship. I almost fell out of my chair. She's like, I know it's been on your vision board for 10 years now. And we finally did it. And I think so I want you to talk about NLP and manifestation, because and I know this is something I know you dig deep into, is the reticular activating system in the brain. So I want you to hop onto all this stuff, and I'm just going to sit down, shut up, and learn.
Well, first of all, I can't talk about NLP because I am not an NLP coach. It's not part of my training.
I know.
But manifestation is something that I have been looking into for a while, and I am not overly skilled at it, I would say, but a lot of the people that I'm around are. Like, for instance, my coach right now wanted an Apple Pro laptop. You know, it was like their top of the line, every bell and whistle that you can get on this laptop. And so what he would do is, whenever he was at the mall, he would go into the Apple store and he would go to this laptop on display, and he would bring up a blank screen and he would just type in, this will be my laptop. And then he would like turn around and leave. And I guess like a month and a half ago, he brought one home. You know, so he had manifested that laptop for himself. And what I see working as manifestation, it's not just sort of making that wish and putting it out in the universe and hoping that it comes back. What it is, it's like you said, your obsession becomes your possession. So you bring that into your thoughts, and the whole process is that by thinking about that and making those little steps and those little adjustments, we become the person who would have the thing that we are trying to manifest. And once you become the person who would just naturally have that, you have it. You know, like your cruise. Like, if you hadn't put that on your vision board, and if you hadn't thought about that for that time, would your wife have scheduled that holiday for you?
Nope. And she booked another one. We're going in about another 8 weeks. So, but something I want to talk about is I had a friend of mine. He was wealthy. He had money. He always wanted to he always wanted to buy a Lambo, and he had the money. And I was like, bro, why don't you have one? He's like, I don't know. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to pick you up in an hour. We went to the Lambo dealer. We test drove it. He smelled the leather. He touched the leather. He got emotionally involved in it. And when then he said, now every morning when I woke up, and I started my car. I'm like, it doesn't sound like the car I was just in. A month later, he went back and he got that Lambo. Like for me, I
Yeah.
picked out a house in the Bahamas, and it was a 7-figure house, and we were looking at it, and I was touching the paint and all that, and I actually sat on the beach and just I could smell the fresh air, I could smell the salt air, so it got me emotionally involved. So now every time I start a show or do something, I'm like, I can smell the air. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think if your goals don't have an emotion attached to it, you're not going to hit it. So is that something you teach your clients?
It is, because a lot of what we do is driven by emotion. So our actions come from our emotions. So emotion is part of, like, if you're trying to manifest something, you do have to both be emotionally attached to it, or not so much attached, but emotionally involved. And it has to be, like, it really does have to become part of your makeup. So if you want that house on the beach, you have to make adjustments to become the type of person who would have that house on the beach. And once you become the person who would have that house, it'll be yours.
And something I learned from a gentleman, somebody you might have heard of him, he wrote a book or two. His name is Brian Tracy. Something that he talked about is the I am statements. Because once you say, I am something, your mind has to turn it around, and you have to become that thing, because your mind your mind and your body have to agree on something. So how important are the I am statements that you're giving to yourself?
They're important, but it's also important the way that you do it. Like Henry Ford said, if a man thinks he can or thinks he can't, he's right. Yeah. But our brain is a funny thing. If we tell it something, it's going to do its hardest to try and make that a reality within reason. So if you are, say, trying to lose weight, and you've always been overweight, you've always been an emotional eater, all you do all day is eat, and you decide that you're going to start losing weight. If you tell yourself, I am skinny, or I am losing weight, your brain is, the first thing it's going to do is come back and say, no, you're not. So what you have to do with your I am statements is, first of all, they have to be believable for your brain, which means that there has to be some truth within it, and they have to be a little bit further out from your truth. So instead of saying something like, I'm skinny or I'm losing weight, you start saying things like, I can lose 5 pounds. And your brain is like, well, yeah, we can probably do that. And then it starts working for you.
So you're saying that I can't play for the Lakers right now? Is that what you're saying to me?
No.
No matter how many times I say no matter how many times I say I'm going to fire LeBron and I'm going to go play for the Lakers, it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, your brain is going to go, no, you're not.
So what has Michael got going on now? What's going on in your world, and how can we support your mission?
Well, my world is, I am, concentrating on my coaching. I am concentrating on helping people, and just living my day to day is really where I am at right at the moment. I have, things that I am personally working on in my own psyche so that I can help people better. And that's really, I'm very much like right now person. So, that's really what I'm thinking about right now, is just being able to help as many people as I can.
So what kind of
So,
clients are you taking on?
well, I am helping people with getting through burnout and helping people rediscover their passions again. So that would be professionals who are feeling a bit trapped in their jobs that they used to love, but things aren't going their way. I help them to rediscover their beliefs and values, because we lose sight of that kind of stuff as time goes on. And I help them to build a more growth oriented mindset. And we look at goals and proper goal setting, so that they have goals that are achievable, and things that they can do that are outside of what they're doing now, but they are still achievable for them. Like we talked about, losing the I am statements with losing weight. If you just say I'm skinny, that's not going to work. That's not an achievable goal in your mind. But the losing 5 pounds, that's an achievable goal. So you start with that, and then the next one is I can lose 10 pounds, and you build on it. So those are the types of people that I'm working with now. I have previously worked with also people going through midlife crisis and helping them get through that part of your life, because that can be a horrible part of your life. So I still have a couple of people that I'm helping through with. Yeah. So if anyone is interested, they can find me on all of the socials. It's Michael Dorang on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm also on TikTok, but I don't dance.
Damn it. Damn it, Michael. So, guys, make sure you check them out. And I wanted to offer, I didn't know if I talked about it earlier. If you buy my book right now, the podcast blueprint, it's $30 for the autograph copy, and you'll get over $1,000 in bonuses. That means I'll have you come on my show. I'll promote you everywhere on all my socials. I'll actually do a Facebook ad for your business. So if you want to learn how to become a great podcaster, get over 2 million downloads, have guests like Michael, John Lee Dumas, Robert Kiyosaki, Sharon Lecter, I'll teach you how to do it. So Michael, brother, I just want to say I'm so grateful and humbled that we're friends, and hopefully we can build a generational relationship from now on.
Absolutely. Thank you, Richard, for having me on. It's been a blast. I have enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. I love you, brother. And guys, remember, I always end my show with the Joel Osteen quote. It says, we all have a choice. We could either be the victor or we could be a victim. If you listen to this show, you are no longer a victim of your past, but you're a victor of your present and your future. So, guys, thank you for always showing up, and I love you guys. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. I love you guys. Michael, my brother, have an awesome week, and I can't wait to get together, hang out. Maybe we can actually do some talks together.
Absolutely. Always up for a good chat.
All right, brother. Be good. Have a great week.
Thank you, Richard. You too. Take care, my friend.
Be good.